I go to QPR, it was technically a really good group. And so for me, it was about giving 3 or 4 players complete freedom to rotate positions, to break the rules. So Ilias Chair, Chris Willett, Tyler Roberts, and possibly to a lesser extent, Timo Robenham, who was coming on loan from Aston Villa. You've got the freedom to go and break the rules. So you can rotate. When we lose it, just fall back into an organisation. So defending was really fixed. It was create a 10v8, come off their centre halves, look at them, so we're pressing forward, keep playing front or outside us, and push them off the pitch. That was it. If they go a bit more direct, we'll go a little bit higher on you, Glenn, so you can't go direct. But in general, that was it. So we only played around with attack.
What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another show. And this week we've got a top guest for you. It's Micahel Beale. If you don't know, Micahel is, to me, he's probably one of the best coaches in the country, young English coaches in the country. Spent his academy career working at Chelsea and Liverpool, worked at the first team in Brazil, and then at Rangers under Steven Gerrard and Villa, and had been a first team coach, stroke manager at QPR, Rangers and Sunderland. And look, Mickey's been on the show, I think 3 or 4 times now, and it's just, it never fails to inspire me. Somebody just knows the game so much, knows the game in and out, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to him to join Glenn and I, just to talk through the age groups all the way from the pre-academy to the first team, trying to pick into his knowledge and his great wealth of experience and try and get those nuggets out and to share some of his journey. So it's a top episode, one you're really gonna enjoy. And we went on for a bit as well. I had to pull each other away because we could have sat there all day talking. But like I say, those of you who know Micahel, very inspiring guy, speaks really well, and also has the knowledge and and the experience to do it. So this is one, a lot of people say to me, how can I improve as a young coach? It's listening to podcasts like this with Mickey Beale. And if you're lucky enough to ever see him coach as well, he's top. So yeah, really fortunate he's agreed to come back on the show to share some of that insight and that quality knowledge. And just a reminder, if you want to know more about ball mastery and 1v1, we have a 20% discount on the My Personal Football Coach 1v1 and ball mastery courses at the moment. Just use the code MPFC coach and you get 20% off, and follow the link in the bio as well. But without further ado, let's get into the show. So welcome back to another MPFC Youth Development Podcast, the Coaching Family Special, joined by my good friend Glenn Hicks as ever. Glenn, how you doing?
Very well, thank you, mate.
And a very, very special guest coming back to the show, big friend of the show, Micahel Beale. Micahel, if you don't know, top coach, worked all around the world at all levels. Micahel, for people who don't know, people maybe be living under a rock or don't know you for some strange reason, but give us a bit of a brief description of your playing and coaching journey up to this point, mate.
Firstly, thanks for having us on, and congratulations with how everything's going. It's great to watch outside. The platform's really growing, and the fantastic work that you're doing. I was a young player at Charlton, stayed there from probably the age of 10 through to 19, 20, was a young pro. Fell into coaching at 21 as I started my own soccer school, a franchise of Brazilian soccer schools back then, which was very futsal based, individual based, and that went to starting at Chelsea in 2003, stayed at Chelsea Academy through to 2012, joined Liverpool as head of under 15, 16s. Within a year was taking the under 23s or under 21s now, as we know. 2016 went to Brazil as assistant manager at Sao Paulo, come back 2017 to Liverpool as one of the heads of coaching. 2018 went with Steven Gerrard to Rangers for 3.5 years, followed him on to be assistant manager at Aston Villa for around 30 games in the Premier League. Had a very short spell, but a great spell at QPR, which I really enjoyed as manager, and then went back to Rangers for a year, and then formerly of Sunderland. A very short spell at the start of 2024. So, yeah, it's been varied, doing the laces for the under-6s, so as you know, up to the last few years working at first-team level. It's been a great journey.
So, Micahel, you've had amazing ranges of experiences, literally from the very youngest all the way to the first team. So I think it'd be great to have a chat and, support coaches in terms of looking at little things or ideal ways to develop and different strategies, different techniques at different age groups to really maximise what we're doing at the players. And we can have a little chat around, different trends that we're seeing in the game and how we can really, be the best coaches and develop the players in the best way. So let's talk about the very youngest age groups, those set but pre-academy. So we've got my cat's joining us here. We've got the pre-academy, the 7s and the 8s. or that. Talk about that time, your first experiences in there, and obviously you had experiences there because you actually ran that age group for Chelsea as well. You were managing that age group, the development centres, and supporting coaches. Talk a little bit about those first. I mean, for many people, that's the first interaction they're going to have with the players and coaches as well. Talk to us a little bit about that age group. How important is it, and what sort of things we can think about to maximise it then?
Listen, that was the fantastic period of my coaching where I started out with the young kids, and when you see them get out of the car and race onto your AstroTurf or race onto your pitch, you need to keep that enthusiasm there. And for me, it's about having more balls than players. It's about the personality that welcomes them in the gate, the body language and energy of the coaches. And that was a fantastic time. There was, 32 coaches, 64 scouts in those centres around London. We sort of were trying to identify key qualities in the young players. First things were just things with your eyes. I was looking for players that have real natural enthusiasm. We think that that's like your best friend. It will help you on the resilience and stamina of the journey you're on in football, whatever level you go. We're looking for boys that were fiercely competitive. Sometimes at that age, that's really emotional, lots of crying or sulking when things don't go their way. But you learn over time to adjust the dial and give them a strategy and some way to control that. And you're looking for the movement mechanics, because you think that's the glue. That's the glue to all the work that you're going to do in the next few years. And even at a young age like that, it might be that a boy's had older siblings, so there's a little bit more advanced than another boy. But if you look at and we was very skilled in that with all the staff we had. If you look for certain qualities that you invest in, a lot of those things we're saying there about natural enthusiasm, fiercely competitive, they're like personality things. So there's a lot of players now that we both know that are playing at international and Champions League level. And when they come in their gate, the little personality and energy they had, it was something that just caught you to a young boy. And then you've got to trust your program. And obviously our program back then was very aggressive in terms of getting a number of good players in via our scouting network. But then our coaching program was, I look back now and we didn't know it at the time, but it was fantastic. The work that we chose to do and the things we chose to focus on, those boys on their journeys.
I mean, there's loads of interesting things to dive into there. So just talk about then. I mean, you're lucky now. We're fortunate, and we've been, we've three of us have been working in the game for quite a long time. We've seen like a full cycle is quite an important thing, isn't it? It's a cycle from, eights to the first team. Can you give us some examples of that? Like players that you saw, you came in, some of those players we might know in the Premier League now who maybe you thought, wow, yes, or even some players you thought, oh, he surprised me, that sort of thing, because that's the great position of the experience is priceless, isn't it? Seeing those young players, understanding what the player development cycle looks like.
Yeah, well, anyone probably from, say, 22 to 28 now that's come through a London academy, I would have probably known them or their parents at that stage because I was overseeing that programme. And the beauty of overseeing it is I wasn't working in East London or South London. I was overseeing the whole programme around the southeast of England. And so therefore, I was controlling the registers. The players' addresses would come in. I'd be writing the letters out to invite the parents in. I'd be the first line of contact when the boys come across to Cobham. I would stand in front of the parents and speak, as you know. So there's so many. I actually found an old register the other day from the under 9s through to under 16s in 2012 at Chelsea. And there was 134 players in the academy and 66 made it as professional, which I think is about 49%. Wow. Out of that 49%, I think 36 played in a top 5 league. So we could be here quite long speaking about the names, but the first group I had Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who was obviously at AC Milan, Jordan Houghton, who was at Plymouth, now playing in the Championship. The next group, you'd have like Fikayo Tomori, Tammy Abraham. That was just, in that early stage. Then you had like Dapo Afolayan, who's gone on now and is playing for St. Pauli in the Bundesliga, who dropped into non-league and come back round. You Declan Rice, Eddie Nikitas that sadly moved on from Chelsea, but actually on their journey, that was very, very important. The Mason Mounts, and there's so many, you actually forget to mention them. Dom Solanke, who's doing fantastic at the moment for Spurs, and he's rid the roller coaster of his journey the last few years, but never in doubt that he would come through. Players then you've signed and worked with later in life, like Jake Clark-Salter, that you then signed at QPR as a first team manager, who you saw as an under-11 coming in on trial as a little left winger or centre forward. So the journey's been incredible, but it's also staff as well. Like if I look at the two major academies, Chelsea and Liverpool, the amount of staff that have gone on and are still involved in football and the knowledge and experience they've got now from those days, back at that development programme. And I would say that was hugely important, the work those local scouts and local coaches in the development centre programme did back then to secure the stronger talents at that age, and then the work that we did through the years. Obviously Chelsea Academy at the moment, as we say, it's got a number of players doing ever so well in the game.
Interesting. And so, you talked about how they move. Is that really the key thing for you, thinking about the natural, like you say, body mechanics or stroke athleticism? Is that one of the key indicators for you in terms of that age, and when players come in terms of you thinking about, right, can this player make it all the way to the first team?
It's so difficult at that young age, isn't it? There's not everybody's going to be a naturally really good mover. And you're talking about boys coming in at 6 or 7. Some boys would have older brothers and be playing in the garden or playing over the park with a younger brother and just have the advantage of that. Where you're born at that time of that stage of your development, the month that you're born in, so advantageous as well, because you get into football a little bit earlier. Definitely, I think movement mechanics. If 100 players, young kids, come onto an AstroTurf and run around, definitely some are going to move better than the others before they've had any sort of help with that in terms of their movement mechanics. And all that helps you when you start getting the ball each and you're working on balance and coordination of, the 8 surfaces on each foot that you're twisting and turning. It's just going to be like a glue. It's going to help you make things stick. And then obviously you have to enhance that through your training and your training program. And I think, there's a lot of hybrid skills across different sports at that young age, like multi-sports will really help you. So movement mechanics is a big part. I think personality and enthusiasm is massive, not just for the players at that age group. I also, you want to see a player come on the AstroTurf and really want to play. You don't want to be having to motivate them, You want to be turning the dial down, not up, in terms of personality. And that's what you look for in coaches as well. I'd like to think we hired a lot of very good coaches back then, and we hired on personality and enthusiasm. We hired coaches that were like young inventors. They wanted to go on a journey with the game. And that I think back to that time was great. I actually went to Brazil and come back and did that same job for Liverpool from 9s to 12s. So 10 years later. And it was fantastic again to go back and remember all the stuff we were doing back then at Chelsea, and they're still some of the best times because it's the innocence of football back then. So that's when the parents are coming in, they don't know, they've just took their little kiddie to a football club at 7 or 8, and then someone said he's not bad, do you want to go along to this development centre, and then they're off and running. So it's a time when you can really help guide parents, I think, as well.
Interesting. And what gives an idea what a good typical session would look like then in that pre-academy phase at that time at Chelsea?
Yeah, more balls than players. So no coaches with bags of balls like they've got the loot and they're only letting one out. So more balls than players and lots of touches and coaching football in the 1s, 2s and 3s. And you hear me say that quite a lot today, all the way up to first teams. Coaching the small games in the big ones, strong at 1v1, strong at the game. Exploring with the ball on your own, getting that relationship between you and the ball and then you and the game. And lots of short practices, really. So not sticking on a theme, but lots of short practices, making it really bespoke. I think academies, they're private schools. I can't pay for my son to go to Liverpool Academy or Man United Academy. It's a private school. But if you're taking your child and investing in their education at a private school, you're expecting a more bespoke education. And I think, even at those young ages, it's getting in and seeing what a player can do, what a player likes to do, and just helping them using their little strengths and likes about the game, using that little passion to help develop them. And I think, so if you go back what a session will look like, there'll be a lot of individual ball work, lots of 1v1 playing against the different shapes and sizes that you have naturally in the group, the quick ones, the big ones, the small ones, getting used to playing and learning how to maybe use one teammate, because you're talking about 7s, 8s and 9-year-olds, one's enough. So you're learning the game through 1s and 2s, how to play, how to use a teammate, playing 1v1 with the influence of the second player, playing 1v2 and then ganging up on you, all those little bits, and then just playing. playing, and then the personality of the coach really, in terms of, you know, enhancing those young kids' love for the game. Like I said, they get out of the car, they run to the pitch. I used to say it to all the coaches back at Chelsea, you'll remember, if after 15 minutes them boys have not got the same energy, that's you as the adult. It's not the kids. They come there with all that. So you have to enhance that.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that twice about that energy. You know, that's a really important thing. I think at all age groups, really. You know, even up to the first team, but particularly at the very youngest. So I'm interested in terms of, you know, you talk about identifying the coaches with those traits, and what can you say, you know, to support coaches if they're struggling with that, maybe that aspect of it, as you know, in terms of that charisma or the drive or being that personality to then, you know, deliver it on the pitch.
Yeah, there's lots of types of coaches, isn't there? You know, there's a leader, there's a technical coach, a tactical one, there's now set play coach, there's analysts. I think there's roles for all different types of specialism in terms of coaching. But if you're going to work with young kids, you have to have the ability to inspire and interact with those kids. You have to, because, you know, it's as a parent, I can, you know, I'm not expecting either of my two sons or daughter to be Lionel Messi, if you like, or whoever else, but when they go along, I do expect them to, you know, to be inspired by their coach, to get energy from their coach, to get confidence and belief from their coach. It's about an experience, isn't it? When you I'll take my daughter to ballet or gymnastics. As a football coach, I can just sit back and I'm looking at the positive energy in the room. I'm also looking at coaching ratios. So ours back then, I was almost guaranteeing 1 to 6, 1 to 8 at worst case, because I wanted the kids, when they come in, to have a smiley, happy face they were familiar with, that was helping them on their journey. So I think for coaches, it's like the game gives you so much. You know, we don't need super coaches. The game gives you so much, and you can influence learning via the game. I think sometimes we're in such a rush to get to 11v11 when the real art of coaching is the detail of coaching in 1s and 2s. That's where you'll see the master coaches, you know, the people that can actually work with a single player and really help them on the journey. It's not you. Sometimes you have to take the lens away from the pitch. The pitch is guaranteed, so you know, whatever age, if training's at 11 o'clock, or if for a young kid if it's after school 5 o'clock, that's a guarantee. How I arrive to training, the relationship and the feeling that I have coming through those gates or coming out to training every day, at different ages you'll have different levels of detail, but that's really important. You know, that really important, like how I feel when I'm turning up. So at that younger age, you don't need a 3-course meal. It's an 8-year-old kid. You need to feed them baby food in football terms. They've been playing football 2 years. You know, some of us are racing ahead. We used to talk about the mini Mourinhos or mini Pep Guardiolas probably now, 20 years later. But where's the role models for these young coaches? And that's what you have to try and create inside your club. And I felt that's what we had back then at Chelsea. And then I found that also at Liverpool at slightly older age. You have to create your own coaching union inside. And the passion you talk about player development will go on the pitch. Or it won't if the passion and the ideas are not there and the creativity. You know, you worked there at Chelsea and you also worked at Tottenham with someone like Chris Ramsey, who I've worked with at senior level. So you can imagine, like, me and Chris were still having those conversations about QPR first team. Now we're talking about 28, 29-year-olds. So the same things still apply. You know, it's about engaging and challenging the players, isn't it, on their journey?
Yeah, very interesting, mate. And also, I think just quickly, I'll talk about that. I remember that environment, being in that and also what I thought was really powerful was having, you know, your Brian Mustalls or the people, Harry around, myself, like people who are working in the foundation phase, but also in the development centres as well. So like a real tight-knit team. So as well as the, you know, younger coach, aspiring coach, you had a really good mix of that experience as well, and players, people who were already in the academy. I think that was really powerful, not only for the players, but from the parents, but for the coaches as well, I think.
Yeah, I wanted the academy, and it wasn't just me, there was other decision makers there, as you know, but my thing was bring the academy coaches down, because their advice to parents is really good. They will also, as the head coaches in the development centres, will develop my other coaches that were there into academy coaches. You could be a player at Chelsea and come in 7 years old, and by under 12, you would know all those coaches all the way through. So it was like there was actually, yes, the badge gets you in, the people make you stay, feeling and relationship. I'll come back to all the time. How you feel about your journey, how you feel about the style of football you've been asked to play, your relationship with the ball, your relationship with the game. At every age group, that was important. And I think we had that spot on. you were also behind the scenes when there was a lot of debates and arguments going on as well, which I think was healthy because that showed passion. And you know, the players started getting a bit younger, which I was a bit worried about because the identification becomes more difficult. You are making a hunch on players at 8 and 9 as well. One of the things I always say to the scouts is, what excites you about the player? And do you want to go on a journey with them? And they had to explain to me what excited them, because I had to try and see that myself, because you had all the scouts from the different areas and the coaches that were very attached to the players from their local centres. So me trying to get that into one group, with all of us trying to pick a group for the under 9s, that was really important.
Interesting, Matt. And let's move on then, because we talk all day about every age group. I want to try and get in as much as possible while you're here. We got you. Let's talk about the foundation phase then as well. How unique is that? Tell us the difference between that and, as you discussed, the pre-academy, that journey from 9s to 11s or 9s to 12s. What's that look like? Key things, common things we can look out for.
Well, your contact time goes up. So straight away, they're coming into the academy more. They're playing with you at the weekend. They're not off at different clubs. So they're your little boys, if you like now, or our boys within the academy. So we were heavily based on the hard drive techniques of receiving, moving, releasing. So you're receiving to control, you're receiving to space, you're receiving to protect, you're receiving to move. Your moving is obviously you're running with the ball, or you're dribbling, and the difference is, and then your ball striking. So your releasing skills of your passing, shooting, and so we were heavily based on that. We had that session with the 9s and 12s that went round on the carousel on a Tuesday. The more I look back at that, the more how that importance, just for the people that are listening, it was 8 minutes on a certain technique. You try to get up to 400 touches and move on. At the end, you just play street games. I think I took that then and implemented that a little bit at Liverpool, maybe 8-10 years later. I felt that was like a factory. You had the competition within your own group. We were very fortunate back then. The games we had in training were better than any of the games we played at the weekend. So we just played lots of games and lots of competition. So the hard drive and the outplaying. So the hard drive, the stronger your hard drive, the stronger your confidence. It's a very personal thing. So if us three are doing it and Saul, you really are working, and Glenn's working less than you and I'm working less than me, the only person I hurt is myself. So again, we go back to that bespoke education, with all the twisting, turning. Some things might come natural to Glenn that don't come so natural to me. So that's where you get a little bit more guidance. So the hard drive and the outplaying. And as I say, when I look back, we were very, I can articulate it better now, but what was we doing was coaching 1s, 2s and 3s. You add one, maybe add one more in 3s, play the small games within the bigger game, break it down. Always through fun drills as well. So you had someone like Bob Osborne, who was a master at just influencing a 3v2 practice. And he was coaching it, but not in a way that another coach would go into it and break things down. So it's that flow. And I think that one of the big things we can't underestimate is the environment in terms of the other players that were there. I think the boys inspired a lot of the coaches. They showed you a level, and then you wanted to keep pushing their learning. And so if you go from like that, I don't think that stops. I think just as they start getting a bit older in the secondary age group, between 13 and 14, it's not more about self-awareness then. Like, what's stuck? What are you good at? And how do you use focused practice to make your strengths into a super strength? That period of hard drive outplaying, coaching in 1s, 2s and 3s, it continued all the way through the primary, through to the secondary age groups. Obviously you go on tours and you play against the best teams in Europe or the biggest clubs in Europe, different styles. You obviously have to your efficiency has to go up, your decision making has to get quicker, but it's still the laws of the playground, mate, which is the most skillful ones are revered if you're tough to play against. And then I suppose you add speed in, but speed in different ways, speed of decision making, speed of action, speed of movement. That's the law of the playground. That's how you gain respect, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very, exactly, mate. Very interesting again. But I think, what would you say? What about a couple of things then? What's the balance between team play and individual work, or individual possession and group possession within the foundation phase at the beginning and maybe at the end? How do you transition the players from what it was 7v7 to maybe 9v9 and that sort of thing?
Well, each coach had their own way of doing that, and obviously the club had a philosophy and the style and formation it was going to play. I've always been much more situation led, so like the small games within the big game, teaching football via maths, like it's me me and Glenn v you, you know, like, so how do I use Glenn? How does Glenn's movement help? I think you can get a little bit carried away. I looked, we used to speak about then, 7-a-side, that the defenders were on holiday and we was playing a 4-2-3-1, and who's the two midfielders for Chelsea? And it was like Lampard and Essien, right? Who's the number 10? Like, who's on the left wing? Robin. Who's on the right wing? Duff. Like, who's up front? Drogba. Right, the defenders are on holiday to the under-12s. That's how we used to word it. You know, that every time the goalie gets it, he needs an option on his right and his left. And can you, when you're dribbling forward, eyes down the pitch? Because, you know, like when you're learning to drive, eyes down the pitch, eyes down the road. You'll see all the cars around you, but you're on. So eyes down the pitch, what's on your left hand, what's on your right hand. The ability to use one player, as I say, you know, how to pass and move, how to use their movement as disguise. So 1v1 with a second player. So I think that the art of teaching, so it's teaching, it's not coaching, so it's the art of teaching the game is really important. And you teach it, because this is the thing, like as you go through the levels in football, it's like everything you do is individual development. Everything you do. So all this idea of staying out of a bag and of balls, that's like the last part. You know, all that team bit before, again, how you arrive towards the train, how you're feeling about yourself, but everything you do is individual. It's just, I'm not sure we take the time to check in enough with players, you know, like on the individual level. Like, it's something that I'm working on now at senior level, but everything you do is individual. And we had to chat, you know, we talk about individual development. Well, if us three all go and take a session now and a coach is doing a theme, we're all dissecting that information in a different way, ain't we? So it's how, again, it comes down to those coaching ratios. It comes down to, I still think in those younger ages, there's a lot of generic things. So let's not move off that hard drive of receiving, moving, releasing, and outplaying in 1s, 2s, and 3s. Let's not move away from that, because when they're so young, there's a lot of what I would call the hard drive, you know, the foundation. It's called a foundation stage. You should, you know, the foundation of your game basically in those age groups. You might get an Ola Aina who's playing for Nottingham Forest now. He comes in at under 12s ID day. So then you start going, right, has he got natural enthusiasm? Yes. Is he fiercely competitive? Yes, but he could toughen up in some areas. Does he have movement mechanics? Yes. Right, we need to go crazy on the hard drive. It's got crazy because he's really good at running and moving with the ball. He's got unbelievable athleticism, but now he might need his receiving. So then you have to go into that. So you're still doing your little checkpoints of what you're looked for when they were coming in development centres, when they're coming in. And as I say, the players at Chelsea, just the variety and level and the diversity of London, because there'll be a lot of coaches who are on listening that maybe not working in such a diverse place. Maybe they're working up in the northeast or up in Scotland or in some Scandinavian countries. We were very, very fortunate at Chelsea to have different shapes, sizes and diversity. You know, the personalities that come into our sessions, plus our small-sided games, plus firing that competitiveness of individual work. It was great. Do you know what I mean? It was, we didn't know it. We felt we were doing the right thing at the time, but maybe we didn't know exactly how important that was later on.
Yeah, that's top, mate. And let's move on to the YDP now. And I'm interested to talk about your own journey there, because obviously you talked about the pre-academy, the foundation. Now, getting to the YDP now, people don't know, it's 12 to 16s, 13s to 16s. Obviously, the game changes and it tactically becomes a bit more demanding, well, a lot more demanding, and the game opens up into 11v11. Talk about your own journey with that. What are some of the key things you learned? Some of those things, those key takeaways from making that transition yourself as a coach. And also for the players, but other coaches who maybe aspire to working at that level, maybe working with the younger players, but want to work at that and they want to upskill themselves in the more tactical elements of the game.
Yeah, we're very lucky at Chelsea. We had huge influences, you know, like within the academy, lots of top coaches, lots of top managers come, and we had a set way in terms of principles, which I think gave the players a lot of clarity. So in terms of decision making, like as I say, you're stepping in, eyes down the pitch, right hand, left hand, how to open space. Width being really important. You start coaching the game in little partnerships, don't you? So your little centre-back partnership, your full-back wide player partnership, you know, your number 10, number 9 partnership, your two midfielders. We use 4-2-3-1 predominantly at Chelsea in those age groups. And I think that was important. I think you've got to stick with the players as well, because that's the period that you go through growth. So if I watch a Declan Rice now, who did leave the academy at 14, going through his growth, I see that player that was in the under-12s at Chelsea, breaking lines, running, got his man bones now. Back then, when you're little, everyone's the same size, and he showed that energy. So you have to keep watching the players, because they will go through, I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek didn't play for maybe a year to 18 months at one stage. But, you stick with a player and they come out the other side. In terms of the tactics, again, it's back to simplicity. It's strange, Saul, because I hear the coaches that are coming through the courses now, and they speak in words that I just don't understand. They make me feel like I don't know coaching or the game. All these words that they're using, where do they all come from? They all come from academics, but football's played by just young kiddies that are coming in. And so your language is really, really important. So I think at any stage is simplicity. I would always try to use players on TV or in your first team as a role model. So, you would use the Chelsea first team back then had about 6 or 7 international captains, didn't it? With, Terry, Drogba, Ballack, the players that we had, Essien, Carvalho, like Ashley Cole. So you could sort of say, like, what would Ashley Cole do there? Or, what's Robin really good at? Dropping his shoulder and coming inside. Okay, what does he need to go round him? Oh, he needs a fullback to go round him. So he could use him, or he can come inside and shoot. So when it's getting to that, I think that it's a great thing. And it was interesting listening to Cole Palmer last week when they sort of referenced that he was, they reminded people of Zola, and he said, "Oh, I don't know who Zola is, but he's an icon on FIFA, so he must be top." And that just shows you how. I remember going to play Ajax, and we all as coaches were like so happy to be playing Ajax because the influence they'd had in football and in terms of like coaching as well. But the kids didn't have the same feeling, and so I think now they know more of what a 4-3-3 is because they play it on FIFA or they watch it on TV than they do 7-a-side. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I think we can overcomplicate this process. And again, put 20 yards around the ball, play in the 1s, 2s and 3s. And I think you have to be very careful when you get to the 3s, because I think there's a lot of 1v1 and 2v2 football or 2v1 football. Learn the rules of that. You'll be able to play the big game. It's now about, I think Trent Alexander, I was really proud of him when he said this recently as well, the England game, Lee Carsley. And they were trying to get him to say something against Gareth Southgate, but he's got too much class to fall for that. But they said about his position that Carsley was playing him in field, and he says, "Well, I don't see positions; I just see situations in the game and scenarios, and that's it." Like, we have to take these little sound bites that Cole Palmer's saying, or when Nonny was speaking recently about the work that he'd done with yourself in the media, and then when you see Trent say that. And we need to bring that into our buildings when we're in academies. I've got player development's my passion, so there's a lot of things I can say about academy. As I say, it's a private school, so there should be bespoke education. So when you go to a private school, teaching ratios come down. It's a more bespoke education. Should academies be open every day like leisure centres? Should I be able to say, right, I'm at so-and-so academy on Monday between 5 and 6. There's a foundation phase curver session with Saul. Saul's coming in to do ball mastery. You can sign up for the class. And then between 6 and 7, now it's the youth YDP phase. So you're getting that 9s to 12, that peer learning. It's all about outplaying. The next day it might be where it's going to be a strikers specific, or there's going to be a movement mechanics session. In addition to your Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday team bits, like should an academy be like a leisure centre? Should them facilities be open like a leisure centre is, and different classes put in? So we've all got wacky ideas, but obviously I'm just giving you some of mine there. Like if you've got this energy for youth development and you've got a parent and a boy that's intrigued by it, make sure that you're opening the doors of your academy, and providing all these things. You're trying. I think young kids, they believe they can be Superman. They believe they can be Batman. They believe they can be an astronaut. Believe they can be a football player. So it's important that coaches keep that belief in them for as long as possible when you're a child. Do you know what I mean? So it's no different to bringing up your children, so I think.
Yeah, very top, mate. Top. And what about then? Let's talk about the moving along then to the PDP. The 18s to 21s to 23s. Tell us about that then, in terms of what does that look like? Is that just you saying the similar sort of stories? I mean, you talked about that a bit in the past about the sessions, making them just enjoy it. Tell us a bit about that, your transition into that, and then what a player's transition might look like, how you optimise that time.
Well, I was Liverpool's under 23 coach or B team coach at 33, so I got there very early, and I probably got there because everyone thought I was a good coach. And then I realised that, well, 11 o'clock every day or whatever day you train is natural. It takes place. It's a guarantee. But now I've got this varied group of players that are like 15, 16, that are your elite ones, like your Trent or Ben Woodburn at the time. But then you get players coming down from the first team like Balotelli or Jose Enrique. And so all of a sudden it's more about life coaching. So take your eyes off the pitch at the moment. It's more about lifestyle awareness and the choices. There's a difference between ignorance and knowledge. So we'll say of a young player sometimes, why does he always eat that food? Or why does he wear his socks down? Or why does he, like we've got a big thing at not allowing people to be who they want to be in the UK system, I think. We don't have so many mavericks because we don't allow people to be who they want to be. But if you come back to lifestyle choices, I think like it's really important. You're learning to be a professional. So you're learning how to prepare for a session, how to do your recovery, your food, your diet, your sleep, who's in your support network and how important it is that support network's tight. And as I say, there's a difference between ignorance and knowledge. So it's important that you have a plan for how you put these things in, because players between the 18s and 23s, really talented players, if they don't see a plan and believe in their pathway, they can fall into a black hole. And the black hole, pardon my French, is it's shit here. No one gets through. They don't play young kids here. They keep bringing foreign talent in, or they keep buying players for 50 million. So I think you've really got to support a player in this phase, in terms of it's the first phase where there's no guaranteed way of moving to the next team. Do you see what I mean? So you go 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, all of a sudden you get to youth team, you get in the 23s, and it's like quicksand. You can't get out of it. There's no direct pathway. It's a very individual team. And so therefore you come back to, how do you engage the player? Well, where do you want to go? What is your big aim? Okay, I'm going to use that now to put in some daily rituals for you. So what's your self-awareness? Okay, what are we doing about it every day? And then it's like, how does that fit inside the team? And then would your teammates pick you? Because every day at 11 o'clock, you get to train. Would your teammates pick you? What's your relationship like with staff? Like, what's your support network around you? Who's involved in that support network? So I think, again, it comes at every stage of player development, it has to be more bespoke. And again, you're taking someone from being dependent on you at 6 or 7, or whenever they first come into your environment, and you're trying to make them independent. You're not a shrink. You don't want them to come and sit at your office every Tuesday and say, give me the answers. No, every single conversation you have, you're trying to make that player more independent. So when you're working with someone on a certain goal or ownership, for example, you want them to be able to break that down. So, do you know what I mean? It's a tough role. I think, again, we used to talk to the players about Luis Suarez at Liverpool. So Luis Suarez is at Nacional at 18, 19. He then transfers to Groningen, has a season and a half there, transfers to Ajax, has 2 years there, arrives at Liverpool maybe 23 or 20, between 22, 24. And we're expecting our 17-year-old to be better than Luis Suarez. So sometimes you've got to know the journey. There's only one player in the whole 20 years I've been involved in player development that's took the lift. So he's gone 16s, 18s, reserves, first team. And that's Trent Alexander-Arnold. Like, he never went on loan. He just took the lift. He went through the age groups, had some bumps, but he went through the age groups and played. Whether it be Mason Mount, Declan Rice, Tammy Abraham, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Harry Wilson, Ola Aina, Dom Solanke, they went off and had loans. And it's that race to 100. We think after 100 games that football will tell you what level you're at. But get to 100. You can start in the Premier League and end up in League Two. You can start in League Two and end up in Premier League. But get to 100 games at first team level, and it's a great... I like that. So we had a build up where the race to 100 was going on. So the players sort of bought into that. And again, that's when I started using the unit coaches. So your goalie coach has always been very bespoke in terms of working with the players. But then I started using one for the defenders, one for the midfielders, one for the forwards. 80% of the work was done off the pitch in terms of the welfare. Like, how are you, and keeping you in mentally a good place? Okay, what do you want to be? What are we doing about it every day? How does that fit inside the team? And would your teammates, and what's your relationship management like? Would your teammates pick you? What's your relationship like with staff? Your relationship with social media, the car you wear, the car you drive, the clothes you wear? Because you're asking a man that's maybe 60 or between 40 and 60 to pick a 17, 18-year-old to play in their first team, when the average tenure of a manager is 7 months. So there has to be a plan. And that's why now I think the best academies do have specialists at each age group, don't they? And it's got to be your passion. It can't just be you're there on a conveyor belt to get to the next stage. Because where's the role models for the foundation phase coaches? Where's the role models for the youth development phase coaches? Where's the role models for this phase of quicksand between 18s and getting to be a first team regular? It's fascinating. Like, we could spend an hour on one subject here, couldn't we? Do you know what I mean? It is fascinating.
Yeah, brilliant. So just about Trent. Tell us about Trent then. At that time, talk about one. You could pick one player out, but what was he like then? And talks about his. Did you see that in him in terms of everything, like his personality, obviously technique, and having all those attributes to potentially go, play at the very highest level for England?
My first weekend in 2012, I went to Liverpool. I watched the 10s, 12s, 14s play Man United. So from a Londoner, just being at Chelsea, then you're going to watch Liverpool Man United. It was a great day. You're walking around the pitches. There was only 3 mixed race players in the Liverpool academy in those age groups. Like, everybody else was, was white. So there was only 3 mixed race or black players. And I remember watching the under 14s. Trent was playing centre back. He would have moments of genius and then moments where his focus was out, or moments of erratic. So he had the maverick, if you know what I mean, sort of behaviours. Really good movement mechanics, but his arms and legs were everywhere, blowing in the wind, because his body wasn't, it was like a bag of bones. And I had a gentleman's bet with the coach of his team then and the education officer after the game, having a coffee. I said, he'll play in the first team. And they were like, who's this mad person that's just turned up day one? And it was only for 20 quid, so it wasn't the biggest bet we ever had. But it was, the reason I said it was he had the most qualities that we would have liked back at Chelsea or in London with the diversity. Now, there was a lot of work that Trent had to do. I remember giving him his under-23s debut against Man City at Anfield, and Brandon Barker, a winger at Man City at the time, absolutely killed him. I think Trent spoke about it since he's a senior, and then about 4 months later, he's making his debut at Old Trafford against Martial and starting, and you're thinking, oh no, other than the parents, you're the ones most worried. But he had a massive enthusiasm. He was extremely competitive. He had really good movement mechanics. Then it was about putting all the work into him, the work that Pepin Linders and Alex Singlethorpe and Neil Critchley did with him when they had him in the older age groups. Then he came into me, but he jumped past me quickly and went to Jurgen, and obviously Pepin was there. He's always had transferable skills, so he's never been a position player. He played right wing, centre back, centre midfield, as an 8, as a 6, then came through as a right back. We sort of, right back just fell natural for him to come through. But when he went full time, he took off, mate. He just took off. And you go back to that natural enthusiasm, being competitive. His drive to be a player just took off. His body changed in terms of filling out. That then enhanced his movement mechanics. Like, you always see this unbelievable technique he had on his right foot, but I tell you what, his left foot's not bad as well. And his vision for seeing a pass. So you make a strength a super strength, don't you? So his super strength is obviously, he's one of the most gifted passers in the Premier League, if not the most gifted. And again, his support network, it was his mum and his brother, so his family, the club, and an agent that that was also someone that was really close. So there was less variables with Trent. There was less passengers on the journey, I think. Really good guides in the club, really good parent support. Boy had a burning desire to fulfill a dream to play in the first team, and he just chased it. So he was on a you versus yourself. I talk about that a lot. It's a subject I'm really passionate about. You v you. Invent yourself. So in a younger age, 1v1, invent yourself. Strong at 1v1, strong at the game. Now start adding players in. As you get to the older age groups, it's all the other things away from the pitch. How do you control all the other things? Or how do you get knowledge about sleep, diet, prep, recovery, why you should do the gym, why you need to arrive at the pitch, knowing what you're working on. So that's why you need specialists at each age group, I think. And it doesn't mean you can't transition like we've all done from different age groups, but I think while you're working at the foundation phase, be the best coach at wow moments, encouraging wow moments, encouraging you can be a superhero. And then when you go through the age groups, be the best guide at as you learn, going through you do in secondary education. I'm just going to go off tangents. It's the best way I answer questions. I know I can talk a lot, Saul, but I'll go across to open a school in Qatar, right? So I go across to open this education thing that I'm an ambassador for in Qatar with a company called LLS. And they're at the British school in Qatar. And the head teacher is a Russian-French guy that had been the head of the British school in Zurich. And now he's the head of the British school there. We had the best conversation about development. Not player development, just about development through secondary age groups. And it was all about that. Like, what is your... what do you naturally gravitate towards? What do you like about life? How can, what's the most inspirational person in your life? How did they make you feel? What did they make you do? Then you start learning how you can work with that person. How do you make your strength a super strength? How do you enable people to communicate outwards without being embarrassed, what they're good at and where they're trying to go? I'm curious that we don't develop any Ibrahimoviches in the UK because we don't allow them to. We don't allow our children to say what they want to be and not be embarrassed. Do you know what I mean? As I say, go back to when kids are young, your own children, they believe they can be an astronaut. They believe they can be Lionel Messi. They believe they can be a superhero. Try to keep them in that mode as much as possible. And actually, just give them a plan. So engage with them, challenge them, support them, and your best one, sometimes provoke them. So if someone tells me they want to play in the Champions League and they're 18, 19, and I catch them coming out of or driving in McDonald's drive-through, that's an interesting conversation. That's where you're provoking them, saying, wait a minute, you said. So it's all those little things. That's why it's a lifestyle, I think, development, player development. It's a lifestyle. It's not a chosen profession. It's something that you're doing every minute of every day. Ran over. Sorry.
So let's go then. Let's move to the first. You're one of the people who obviously it's not luck. It's fortunate because you're there because you're one of the best coaches, young English coaches in the game of our generation. Tell us about your reflection on first team football so far. Some of your takeaways, some hints and tips for people who want to get there. And I know you want to talk a little bit about some individual work that you're working on in this area as well. What's happening, guys? Saul here. Before we get into the show, just want to tell you about a special offer. If you're a coach and you're interested in ball mastery, 1v1 and small-sided games, the staples of the best academies in the world and what we talk about a lot on this podcast, you can now get a 20% discount on the My Personal Football Coach Level 1 and Level 2 Ball Mastery and 1v1. All right, so Level 1 is like a basic introduction into this methodology, and number 2 is much more in-depth look at 1v1, Ball Mastery, how to structure sessions and all those soft skills as well. Just use this code, MPFC Coach, and get 20% off now. We also include that 20% off on the virtual conference as well. Just follow the link in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the show.
Yeah, it comes at you quick. So, I had a wonderful time with Steven Gerrard. Wonderful person to work with as a role model, as the way that he carries himself. But obviously as a professional, I learned so much about player development just through the conversations I would have with him and Gary McAllister. We went on a long journey at Rangers, 3.5 years, that ultimately culminated in winning the league invincible, which was fantastic, but there was a lot of bumps in the road. But that was like an extension of my academy time because I was able to put, over a period of time, go on a journey with a team and those players it was a 3-year journey to win the league. Before that, and I'm missing it out because it's the most important time of my life, when I went to Brazil to go to Sao Paulo. It was my first time at first team football in a different language, different culture, which was really important for me also. And say, for example, like if you're a young British coach going over there in a second language and you're working with Diego Lugano, Uruguayan captain, Lucas Prato, plays up front for the Argentina national team, and you start thinking, I'm a British coach, you could be thinking they're not having me at all. You've got to be careful of like self-sabotage. But where I was learning the language, it was like, right, what does Diego Lugano love? He loves defending, he loves competition, he wants to play a game. Right, focus on those things. Like, what does this top young, you could end up going from being an academy coach to jumping into first team football, and now you're coaching players you've seen on the TV that are roughly the same age as you. Well, just forget the name for a minute and break down the person. What does the person love? If he's a midfielder, if he's a passer, a shooter, he loves competition, use those elements. Get into the game. You're only teaching them how to play the game in your vision. You're not teaching them how to play the game. It's different. So the first team football, it comes at you quickly. So becoming a manager, Premier League was great with Aston Villa. So it was a jump up again in terms of players and really exciting young players like Jacob Ramsey, Cameron Archer, Timo Robenham, Jadon Philogene, Lamar Bogard, Kane Kessler-Hayden that have gone on now to play. But then other ones you're seeing like your John McGinn, who was a fantastic player to work with. you know, really dedicated, driven young man, like great left foot. Ollie Watkins, you know. Someone I was fascinated to work with them was Ashley Young, because Ashley obviously still playing now at 40 in the Premier League. You know, that is the original Peter Pan of football, you know, unbelievable, like him and James Milner. But his reflections on his career, I found it lovely being a youth developer all those years to be now at first team and over lunch being able to speak to those players about their journey. It's so much you can, you know, when you're at first team level, why are you failing? Why is a player not getting a new contract, a young player like? And a lot of it breaks down to their hard drive and then their decision making or their ability to outplay or be outplayed. So that means you can take all these things while maybe you're sat with an 18-year-old telling him he's not getting a pro deal. Like the feeling you have in that meeting, you feel like you let them down a little bit as an academy or as a club. Does that make sense? Because you've had them all the way through. And so you can take that back to your under 10s and 11s coaches, can't you? And say, or come and watch the under 23s. Why is the game breaking down? Why has he not took that shot on with his weak foot? Right, go back. Do you know what I mean? Go back and drill down. And I always think before you release a player, you've got to trust your program in any club, because he's been with you 5 or 6 years. So he's your boy, he's your club's boy. You should always try him in a second position before you let him go. You should always change the orientation on the pitch and see if your program's worked and stuck. Most of the time, the reason it hasn't is because they can't defend 1v1. So when we're going on about outplaying and 1s and 2s and 3s, let's not neglect regaining the ball. Let's not regret fighting and that competitive thing, because, again, you might be a midfielder that has to drop to centre-half like Declan Rice, then go back in the midfield. But I'm going off tangent. First team football comes at you quick. I went into QPR. I had real clarity from the owners on what they wanted. I absolutely loved my time there. It was a group that was hungry to jump up and improve. After 14 games, we found ourselves at the end of the table we wasn't expecting to be at. The remit was to develop the players, create harmony in the club between myself, Chris Ramsey, Alex Carroll and the academy and the first team staff. That was easy because they're good people. And then to stay up, but to show that we were evolving and developing and working with a young group. So 14 games, we're top of the championship. There's an approach from outside. Everything goes crazy because you become public property. So all the years I've been at academy, I'm under the radar. It's only us boffins or nerds or inventors of youth football that know each other, that know the journey, but you're now public. You're out there to be shot at, you're out there to be shot down, or you're out there to be promoted. It's one of those three things, and sometimes all those three things at once. You know, so I started learning what was maybe hitting some of the young players that come through. It's wild, but that comes at you quick. Just there, Mickey. Just as you've gone to that first time, your first role as the head coach there. Just interesting. I mean, people like someone spoke to me the other day. Goes, I want to know about the game model. I want to know what their insight. So tell us about, for people those coaches are more tactically inclined. Tell us about you developing your own game model, your own way of playing, if you like, and where that came from, or your inspirations, and that. Well, tell us about that journey. Yeah, occupying areas of the pitch. So you teach the game by going over, round, through. So basically, the game in terms of like length is restricted by offside and the other team's defensive line. So if my centre-halves are on the halfway line, your centre-halves are not going to be in your box. So the game's probably played in 36 to 40 yards of length now because of offside. Okay, and the way teams either press high, sit in the mid-block or drop. So whip's really important. So the ability to go over, round, through. You're then working with the players you got. So at first team, sometimes you're working your ideas times the players, times the club you have. Do you see what I mean? You've got these real ideas of like fundamentals that you want, but you go in and work with a group, and now you might have to change or modify due to their limitations. That's why in academy we shouldn't accept limitations. Do you see what I mean? Every year we hand players over. We want to hand players over that are technically excellent so that the coach can add the tactical work in. That's my belief. I go to QPR, it was technically a really good group, and so for me, it was about giving 3 or 4 players complete freedom to rotate positions, to break the rules. So Ilias Chair, Chris Willett, Tyler Roberts, and possibly to a lesser extent, Tim Arobenham, who was coming on loan from Aston Villa. You've got the freedom to go and break the rules. So you can rotate. When we lose it, just fall back into an organisation. So defending was really fixed. It was create a 10v8, come off their centre-halves, look at them, so we're pressing forward. keep playing front or outsiders and push them off the pitch. That was it. If they go a bit more direct, we'll go a little bit higher on you, Glenn, so you can't go direct. But in general, that was it. So we only played around with attack. So we recruited in Kenneth Powell and Ethan Laird from Man United. And Kenneth Powell, a young Dutch kid I knew, because technically they were different but very good. They could go and occupy the full length and width of the pitch, which allowed Chris Willock, Ilias Chair, Tyler to come in and rotate. And then again, it comes back to feeling and relationship. I sat with those two players, Chair and Willock, and said to them, look, what type of football do you like to play? They gave me all the right answers. So I said, brilliant. Like, they're all the things I've written down. Okay, who's important to that style being implemented here? And they said they were. Okay, well, every day in training, then you better live it. Every single day. If I'm going to build a style in this way, you have to be the one that promotes it every day out there, so the other players believe in it. So the relationship between you two, you know, how hard you're willing to work out of possession. So it was lovely there, mate, because all those boys had an aim of going to play in the Premier League. So straight away, all that work I'd done at 23s level, it was just the next step for me. It was just a natural progression. I also went into a club where you had someone like Chris Ramsey and Les that were really promoting that work as well. And so it became a happy camp really quickly. Unfortunately, outside influences come and then you make decisions. But in terms of influencing a style, well, what's your utopia? So if Barcelona 2012 is your utopia, what can you do with this group that looks like that? And I chose 3 or 4 players to play free. They played in the same team every day in training, because at that level, I don't think Xavi and Iniesta combined the way they did, splitting up to make the teams equal in training. I don't think they did. I just think they bullied the other team every day with the way they played. And I think that's it. I always say to the players, it's your team, how should it look? And then I hold them accountable. The same way I would hold you accountable, Saul, if I said, where do you want to go with your career? And you told me, right, I want to play in the Champions League. Okay, let's work back. What steps we've got to make? What's our daily rituals? Okay, I'm going to hold you accountable with that. I'm here to help you as a guide, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a role model. But you're bringing the motivation. It's your dream, and I'd hold you accountable. I try and do that with teams as well. So that's why first team football with the average tenure of 7 months as a manager at the moment is dangerous, because there's less coaches going on a journey. Do you see what I mean? There's less coaches being able to build. The way the media is now, and fan media and everything. Listen, there's a place for everything in life. I'm not saying that shouldn't be there. It's just I'm telling you what the situation is. You know, if you're someone that believes in developing a model, there's not many clubs in the UK that hire a coach with a model already in place. You know, there's not many Ajaxes or Barcelonas where if you get the job at those clubs, you pretty much know the model. Maybe Man City now at first team level, you think, well, if you go in there, they have a model now they believe in. A lot of the other clubs, the coaches go in, and I'm not sure sometimes the owners know exactly what they want. So when you're speaking with the owners, you really need to get clarity on your remit. The QPR people were really good at that. That took the pressure off. I asked them just to audit me on that work, and although it was only 22 games, it was a hugely memorable period, that one.
Talk about then, talk about individual development then at the top level. What does that look? I mean, you talked about everything's individual development. I mean, tell us about how we can support players, you know, who are at that first team.
Well, there's a lot less variables with young kids. They go to school, they have their parents, they have a structure, they come into the club, and it's just about love of playing football. As you go through the ages, a lot of the first team players have got a lot going on. In the team, out the team, contract coming to an end, new contract, split up with girlfriend, you know, problems with their kids or illness or in family members outside. So you've got this big Pandora's box of 25 players every day coming into your building. So you can't be the super coach. It's about a management team. So as I say, like looking at the NFL, they have 17 assistants to 53 players. Looking at the NBA, they maybe have 7 coaches to maybe a roster of 15 to 20. So I've been fascinated by those sports, you know, like how you get around and work with your players. So again, that's why I decided to go with coaching lieutenants or unit coaches. I have no hierarchy. So there's no like assistant manager, first team coach, balls, bibs and drinks carrier. I don't have that. We're on the same level. You know, you work with the players in your unit, 1-8, 1-6 ratio, depending. I'm expecting you to have breakfast, lunch or dinner with them over a 2-week period. I've always been told, you know, I went on a course, listened to it, believe in it wholeheartedly. If we speak for 5 minutes today, you ask me how my family is, I say, great, what's the weather like? Okay. How are you? Yeah, I'm good. You get past 15 minutes, you now the conversation, you start getting somewhere. So for me, it's like being a life coach. It's take your eyes away from the pitch. As I said, that happens every day at 11 o'clock. It's how you arrive to training, what you're thinking about, what you want to improve, how you feel about the clarity you're given on your role and your journey. So I'm asking these coaches to be so much more than just an on-field coach. So it's a journey that's not been perfect. It was probably at its best at Liverpool under-23s when I first started it, because that staff, we knew each other really well. As you get to first team, you incorporate staff. But again, it comes down to that bespoke. Within the team, individuals learn. So how often do we check in with them? How often do we... So like you have, say for example, Harry Watling at Rangers took all the forwards out for dinner just to have a chat. I mean, when Jermaine Defoe was there under Stephen, we used to just watch all the goals scored on Match of the Day with the other strikers and the chances and the goals the other teams concede and just talk about it. And Jermaine is an encyclopedia if you give Jermaine a chance with open questioning to talk about why a striker scored that goal or look at his movement. So each member of staff is allowed to look after their unit in their own way, whether it's WhatsApp group, whether it's unit work, individual review of clips. But you might have a 35-year-old that don't need the reviewing of the clips, but a 17-year-old that does, all within your little unit. You might go out today and do 11v11 game, but if you're taking the midfielders, Saul, you're only looking at the midfielders. You're only looking at them. When they come over to get a drink, you're whispering coaching, you're firing like, come on, you're playing against Glenn, he's playing it forward more than you. So that's a provoke, isn't it? It might be you're challenging them on the way out. Come on, we've been working on finding your forward on your second touch. So how do you get that? Remember your body shape. So on your second touch, you can play forward. How's your relationship with him? Is he coming short to go long? So even with 11v11, you can do that. So that's what I'm saying. Individual coaching is not just taking a bag of balls out after. Don't get me wrong. That took place every single day as part of people's daily rituals. But I just want these lieutenants there. And maybe it's too complex for first team football. Maybe I need too much time. Maybe I need to amend that. And that's what the last 6 or 7 months at home, or maybe 3 of it, because 3 months I didn't even think about football, but the next 3 months have been going into that programme and looking, and picking a staff to go on a journey with. It's you don't know where you're going to be working next. You don't know what you're going to be able to pay. So you don't know what staff you're going to bring together. But the big thing for me is, again, what do you believe in? You believe in development. You have a plan for the foundation phase, right? What's your plan like with first team players that are millionaires? How do you, because they've got a lot to lose and they've got a lot of status, pride, responsibility as a top player, responsibility to their family. So you have to use that to trigger them every day.
Yeah, amazing, mate. And so what's just an idea then, what a typical, I know you've talked about it a lot, and I've lucky enough to see your work and when you're at Rangers, but in terms of what a typical first team session might look like, and why you're setting it up, what the triggers you're trying to get, and how you're motivating these guys.
Mate, basically we just coach the 4 main things, which is owning the pitch, which is the way we're going to defend, owning the ball, which is the way we're going to attack, winning inside the penalty boxes, 2 red zones, and then the mentality and character required. Because it changed over the season. You could be playing in Europe against Porto, and then we're playing at home against a lower league team, a lower team in Scotland. So, the mentality and character changes. So, in terms of a week, if we had a 4-day lead into a game, say we played Saturday, because it's probably nice to talk through the week and how it looks different. If you play on a Saturday, you'd be off on a Sunday. On a Monday, it's a second-day recovery, but I like to call that like position-specific day, because generally you have the players who didn't play. So it's a great chance to do some real position-specific stuff. It's a great chance for the players who are maybe on a second-day recovery to stay out and serve, knowing that 2 days later, if that's like your starting back 4, they're serving for the reserve back 4. 2 days later, you might reverse that because you need to work with your main back 4. Does that make sense? So you're giving everyone, you're planning your week. But also, if you've played in the game on a Saturday and you're only doing a recovery on the Monday, the players who didn't play are getting real individual session in terms of position specific for 40 minutes, and then they're just playing games. After training, it might be you're sat with your unit coach as a starter in the last game. You've done your recovery, you're going through your clips. Okay, so that's Monday done. Tuesday is more you're out of possession. So you might have your first look at your opponent and you might say, look, this is how they build up, this is how they play through, here's the key players. And it will be a theme on only within the hour and a half, maybe 20 minutes. In terms of that, this is how we're going to approach this game defensively. And defensively very rarely change But you might talk about, we've got a right winger that comes inside his left foot, so it's something we've got to be aware of. Wednesday might be off. Thursday, you'd flip it. You'd do your team meeting before training on how we're going to win. How we're going to win. 2 or 3 things. We're going to overlap ourselves over them. This is how we're going to beat them. And you go and do your own the pitch work. Then on a Friday, it's your match prep, including your set plays to build into the game. In terms of session content, really simple. 15-minute warm-up, 420s. 95 minutes active. As you get closer to the game or match day -1, just take 5 minutes off everything. The day before the game, if your starters go off to do set plays and have done 2.5K, your subs need to train more. It's a great period for them to play more and to get a bit more of the individual work as well. So again, I think a lot of with football teams is momentum. And it's the feeling, happy changing room, happy team. Well, that's really hard when you only pick 11 out of 25. So the easiest way to keep the group happy is your relationships and your feeling. So if you're not in a team, Saul, but I'm staying out working with you something on your you versus yourself as an individual coach, it's really hard for you to fall out with me. You can still have that little look on your face. Do you know what I mean? But the relationship that we've got every day of me pulling for you on your journey. So in terms of the working week, that's pretty much how it works. You have to mix up your voice in terms of who leads where. And you have to know when you can coach. So at Rangers and some championship teams as well will play up to 60 games in a season. So you have about 15 3-game weeks. So if you don't look at your calendar, you'll work out your coaching your reserves more than your first team. Because your main players, your main starters are just playing, recovering, preparing, playing, recovering, preparing, and then when you get a chance, having a day off because they're exhausted. So if you're not careful and don't look at the calendar, if you're my star midfielder, I might never actually coach you. I might only prepare you to play a game with information. So what moments of my calendar can I work with you? That's really important at first team level. People think you've got all the time in the world. You haven't. And some people will call that tactical periodisation. I just call it managing your time. So get rid of the big words again. Do you know what I mean? Go into your schedule, see when you can work with a player. And if you can't work with them on pitch, how am I then triggering your learning off pitch? Is it a coffee? Is it a walk around the training pitch? Is it sending you a video? Is it sending you just a well done? It's amazing. We all need that. Every, the coaching staff need it as well. Like everyone needs the well done. Or I was speaking to this. How many times have you used this one? I was speaking to this coach the other day, and all he talked to me about was you. Like you're not lying to him if it's actually happened, but it's a great win, isn't it? I was out after the game. I was in with their staff, and so of this team said they spent all week worried about you. Bloody hell, mate, we must be doing well. Do you know what I mean? Just like it's called watering the grass, isn't it? Yeah. And there's so many more variables at senior level than at the kids level because they come in and they're innocent. They've just been at school. You're the football coach. You're wearing the badge of the club they love. Like, they meet you. Do you know what I mean? Adults are much more complex. So, but again, it comes down to ratios. 1 to 6, 1 to 8. Bespoke. Wire someone on their journey. Help them. Challenge them. So engage them, challenge them, support. Sometimes provoke them. You're not a shrink. You're still taking them from being dependent to being independent. And so I just think that's the big thing. And we need to take the word youth off of development. Because I'm 44 now, and you coach 29-year-olds. They're just kids. What I'd give to be 29 again.
What about, I remember Dave Collins, who's a sports psychologist at Chelsea, talk about the rocky road to success. Tell us about the rocky road to success in terms of the coaching journey. How is it for you? How do you deal with, for example, the crowd getting on top of you, you're getting criticism off, the disc jockeys, whatever, on the radio, and in 1 minute you're up here, next minute you're down there. What's that like personally to deal with? And tell us, obviously, that must have been a real shock to the system. Imagine coming from, academy football. Yeah,
it's not nice. And also you can shut yourself off from it, but no one else is shut off from it. Do you know what I mean? I think the biggest thing with social media is we get so influenced by it positively and negatively. Social media, you can go on and find like the interview Cole Palmer did the other day, and you can use that with your players on a real positive, but also you can see a manager getting hounded. What I've seen stepping back and having this time out is I've seen some of my friends as managers, and they're really getting it as well, even when they're doing well. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of fan media. Does it exist? I remember the first fan media was maybe Arsenal Fan TV, and they obviously didn't oust Wenger, but they made his last few months more difficult, it's fair to say. And if Wenger was winning, if Arteta wins now, is there any fan media? Because, you know, you ain't all going to praise. It's a game of opinions, but now the opinions are on you. You can shut yourself off from it, but if everyone else in the building's reading it, it does influence everyone else. If your family's reading it, it does influence. So it's difficult. It's difficult, and there's no real way of knowing how someone's going to react to it until you're in the middle of it. I think some's really unfair. You know, I think some things are really unfair. Does anyone care about my story? There's no point me coming on here and talking about it. No one cares. Like, so you just have to dust yourself down. I think what you have to remember is, what do you love about what you do? What makes you jump out of bed every day? Me, it's about helping someone do something that I couldn't do. So I failed at trying to be a professional football player. I fell short. So any young kid that I've coached or been around or seen that's gone on to fulfill their dream to play at whatever level, you know, there's quite a lot of unhappy Championship and League One players because they were trying to be Champions League players. There's a lot of players like that, Saul, that you see them and they're distraught because they're embarrassed because they didn't make it to play for England. But they're paid to be a professional football player. It's like, and you saw them at 7 or 8. The journey they've been on is unbelievable, but they don't see any of the achievement. And so I've had that sort of the last year been thinking about, well, what do I love about the game? What do I not like about the industry? So I have to keep my focus on the bits that I love. So coming on here and talking to you about development, both of you guys, is great for me. Like, even thinking about coming on and then having a chat, I'll make a phone call to someone later, go for a walk, and I'm buzzing. If I can talk about the positivity of the game and the journey, that's my concern with first team football. You know, so also I always wanted to travel and go overseas, learn a second language, learn with the game, even if it's not working, just go in and listening to other people. So I've really pushed myself back on that journey. So I've got a couple of projects next year coming out, one on this player development journey in terms of like, at each stage, like you versus yourself, that journey of like, how could you help as a coach guide a player or be there for the parents? It's quite complex because I think I've finished and then I think of another chapter. So it may end up being something that never comes. But then also the coaching, the 1s, 2s and 3s, something that we're all passionate about in terms of hard drive and out playing. So one's more off pitch, one's more on it. But I think ultimately they're together, and so no, it's that's the big thing. I think with the outside media, it's not going away. I just think that we have to, as an industry, think about abuse. Because me as a 40-year-old man, I can take it. I'm worried about, you know, you talked about Brennan Johnson a couple of weeks ago coming off social media because it's too much. You know, when you keep seeing players come off, like, how are people getting away with making people feel shit about themselves, for want of better words? Do you know what I mean? Like, where do people get off doing that? And it's never people that are achieving. Have you noticed that? It's and again, so how do you prepare our young players, if we're talking about players coming out and of under the radar, because you want to keep them under the radar as long as possible, but then all of a sudden they poke their head out and they're a top player and they take off. Like, the amount, again, that comes back to like the awareness of keeping your support network small, because it does just swell. Like, that around a couple of the moves I've had as a manager, I saw loads of snakes and people come out of the woodwork, and I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable, and perhaps I would have made better decisions if those people weren't around. But that's for another time. Ultimately, I'm very, very fortunate. I've been a manager at QPR, Glasgow Rangers, 52,000, Sunderland, 44,000 in Championship. I've worked in the Premier League. I've worked in Serie A, and I've worked in over 60 games in European football, in the Europa League and Champions League. So I have 257 games as assistant, 77 games as a manager. And at 44, I feel that I'm at the start of my career.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So in that sense, I still feel like I'm a young coach, you know.
Well, I'm sorry, Glenn, I'll bring you in. Sorry, I've been dominating here. No. The mics. Glenn, anything you want to come in and ask Mickey while he's here?
No need to be sorry. I absolutely loved listening. It's been brilliant, really insightful. Mick, what I will say though, and this is a credit to your enthusiasm, because we know the politics at the nearer you get to the top end, or people say politics, but let's be honest, it's bullshit, right? It's so inspiring. We said this when we had Eddie on the other day. Your love, you can only call it love. Your love for player development really shines through, mate. And I'm sitting here as well, like, yep, go on, I want to listen to more. And you've used the word enthusiasm, passion. You know, starting from the kids coming in through the gate, what you spoke about, where we've all been there at your development centres or your grassroots session, where you're looking, how much do they love this game? Who's the first one there? How are they running through the gate? Are you having to drag them off the pitch and say, look, Joey, your mum and dad's waiting for you. But then you've even said that at the top of the first team level. It's all coming back to passion, love for the game. And you asked the question there at the end, what do you love? And that's the key thing. I think that's the key motivator. That's the thing that gets you out of bed, isn't it? Every single day. And I think it's the same for every coach, every player. We've all been through our own trials and tribulations. And you ultimately said helping people. Like, you're looking for the next thing to help, whether it's a first team player with the difficulties or the young awkward teenager that's going for a really difficult time physically or emotionally or whatever, and you need to help them through that. And it's just, honestly, it's really inspiring to hear your energy, enthusiasm. But there's a couple of other keywords, Mick, I just want to pounce on, because I think it's important for coaches, because I'm connecting all the dots with my own journey, and as Saul will, is you spoke about being an inventor really early, whether it's the players or you're inventing your sessions, because you've obviously invented yourself. Saul's gone down a bit more of a one-to-one pathway. All coaches are on that journey as well, Mick, and all of ours look different, and players are as well. But then you said about, I just wanted to kind of connect some dots here for everyone, which makes sense all the way through your journey, and I can hear it. You said about going from being dependent to independent, but I think there's a little bit in the middle there to expand on it a bit more. It's about interdependence. I think the great players that you've worked with, Mick, and the wonderful experiences we know how enriched you are as a coach, have made you what you are as much as you've made them. Do you know what I mean? You said a lot about connections, connections on the pitch, the right back to the centre back, the number 6 to the players around him, but the actual connections between coach and player, like, honestly, you're like a conduit, mate. You can hear it coming out in you, whether it's a first team player like Jermaine Defoe at the back end of his career. And I think it's a key thing for players, young coaches rather, and all coaches to pick up on, about the key words in there, like being inventor. We want young inventors, almost like football scientists. You said boffin. Like, I'm proud to be a football geek. I always will be. I'm the same as you, mate. I'm 41. Yes, I got a bald head, but I'm similar to you. We can be doing this for the next 30 to 40 years, mate. And just hearing you say that is inspiring as well, because your experience is incredible. So I just wanted to say it's been a privilege to sit here and listen as well, and sit in the chair. So yes, great, mate.
I appreciate that. I think that your best players, they have to know. It's like your children. You bring your children up, you want them to have a bit of self-belief, a bit of pride in where they come from, like a bit of self-belief in terms of what their skill sets are and what their strengths are. And I think that's it. The player, I'm not saying that you need to hand the player over and then never answer his phone call again, that between that dependent, independent. You're always there. You're just not in their face. They're not looking at you as the parent, whether they should cross the road. You've led them to a stage, they've got the support mechanism themselves. And the other thing is, no money or loads of money. Loads of money doesn't mean you play good football, and no money means you just got to shell it. I'm not having it. I'm just not having it. If you start with the under-10s at Real Madrid, or the under-10s at South London FC or Merseyside United, whatever it is, you ain't telling me you teach those young kids bad habits just because you're not Real Madrid's under-10s. Surely, and I think that's where we've evolved too. But 10, 15 years ago, there was a correlation to money in the way you play football. And I get at first team level, you got to cut your cloth according to what you have. But again, I would say, Glenn, that it comes back to what do we love watching on TV? What can we aspire to be? What can we try? So we either watch Cole Palmer with these late first touches he's doing at the moment. They're the most outrageous. They're actually getting so late, they're not going to be there in a minute. He did one the other day. It was like a 10-yard touch. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, the inside the pitch when it came sensational.
Yeah, and he's so innocent. He's still really shy. You can see he's like a bundle out, either go really red or or smile. And I love that. I just, you're telling me then that you could just take that into a session plan tonight, couldn't you? There's all these sayings in football, like Bielsa says football's a game of 1v1s. You'll say, like Wenger says, strong at 1v1, strong at the game. Matt Busby said, if you want football's finest fruit, grow it your own. You can use all of these to create a whole development programme. In your academy, if you think twisting and turning is the most important thing, receiving skills, every one of your players, if they come to you 4 times a week from 9 to 16, that's, what is the mastermind subject in your club? And that's why I say, we don't have enough role models for youth development foundation folks. So that's why I really like, the work that you guys are doing. Come on, in a minute, we're going to have our own series, I think. This is number 3, Saul. So I think exactly. I have to slow down a little bit. No, but it's been a pleasure because the goalposts move in football. So, and you have to move with it. My worry sometimes, I'll only say this here because I'm now working at senior end, and I will come back to youth at the right moment and the right opportunity, but I have a worry at first team that you lose touch with the most creative side of football, which is definitely through the academy. And I've got a feeling it's the kids that are giving that to us as seniors. Their energy, their enthusiasm, their desire to get better, their passion when they come in the gate, it keeps you young as a coach, and it keeps you around the ideas and inventing the future game. We don't teach the kids the skills. We encourage the kids to use them in the right way. Do you know what I mean? We encourage them that they can do it. They learn the skills from, Yamal doing it for Barcelona. That's, like the next skills are in the World Cup, or the kids are coming up with these. We just encourage them to do it. We show them a way to break the skill down, the movement down. We teach them the decision, the distance they need to be. We teach them they don't have to use a teammate. They just have to have seen them. It's different. Like when we say to a young kid, why didn't you use him? It's quite aggressive. Like, did you see him? It's completely different. Yeah, I see him, but I thought I was going to use Glenn's movement, and then Saul was going to take Saul's eyes away, and I was going to be away. It's the skill of teaching, and there's nothing better than just getting out there and working. And as I say, the game gives you a lot. So if you're worried about where you start as a young coach, get out there working with lots of different age groups. I've worked disability football, football in the community. I've been lucky to work at really good academies. I've worked women's football. I've worked at Sunday League men's team I coached for a while. On my journey, I've done it all, 7 days a week, fouled, learned, kept on going. But the biggest thing I come back to is, how do you fuel the individual within the team? So this saying of no I in team is the worst saying ever. Football was played and learned by individuals, not teams. And then within that, the game gives you so much. So stop trying to recreate a game with 50,000 rules. Just play the game. Attack and defend goals. Encourage the right behaviours. And outside of that, just get on what we say about the hard drive and the outplaying, the coaching, the 1s, 2s and 3s. Like, we watched the Champions League last night or the Europa League tonight. We're watching the best players and we're wowing about the little overlap or underruns or the disguise in the 1v1. And it's the most physical way to play football, Saul. That's why you're so skinny and I'm a little bit overweight, because you're out there dribbling every day. It's the most physical way to play the game. If you try and travel with the ball for over 30 seconds and hold someone off and bounce someone and pass and check and receive again and twist and turn, it is the most. So there's so many benefits from that way of working. And I've gone past the stage of probably not today. I'll promise I won't rant after this to anyone else I see today. But I just think you've got to learn to bring up your own kids in your own academy, in your own club, make that top. And you can promote things outside, but I'm beyond the caring about people listening and taking it on. The light bulb will go on for them at the right time. There's only so often you can turn it on for them. Do you know what I mean? The work 100%. That you and Glenn are out doing. Yeah. I think we've just got to make sure the players that we're working with see the real benefits, and they will if you make it personal. So you versus yourself, that's the key, I think.
Top. And so what's next for yourself then, Mickey? Obviously you talked about, football's, anything can change in a minute. I mean, you've got you're doing a bit of travelling, got some coach education stuff doing. Tell us a bit, tell everyone at home what you're up to.
Yeah. Doing a bit of coach education with different FAs. I've had a few opportunities further away from home, and I've been vocal about wanting to work outside of the UK. It doesn't mean I won't work at home, but it's not a financial thing I'm looking for, an ego thing. It's not about levels. It's about people and the project. I think that's the biggest thing, that I want real clarity in terms of what someone wants me to do, and if I'm in line with it, then I'll give them everything I've got. And I'm looking forward to go back at working. I had 2 or 3 months where it was more important to be a dad and be at home and live in the moment. I've really, for the first time ever, I've invested the right amount of time into my children, if that makes sense. I've been out there coaching everybody else, but it's been nice to just be dad. But, every day that goes past, I want to get back on the grass. It's actually been 4 or 5 months since I've actually put a session on, which is the longest it's ever been, but I needed it. It's given me a chance to review. I need to decide. I'm a manager now, so if I stay in management, there's delegation things and the way you manage staff that I've had to, I've done some good things, some things I want to improve. So this time has been really important. I've still got the massive passion to be an academy manager one day and take the one age group I haven't taken in youth development is under 18s. I think it's probably the best age group. You play every Saturday, 11 o'clock, everyone, so there's so much more I want to achieve. I would really like an opportunity to go overseas, so it's just picking the right one. There's a few things in the fire. I said I'd give myself a year out, and I'm 3 months or 4 months away from that. I need to stick to it, because I think when I look back, this year would be really important in terms of growth.
Amazing. Look, Mickey, thanks so much, mate. It's been inspiring, been fantastic. Appreciate you having on you again. And we're going to get you on again for the 4th time. Don't worry about that.
No problem. It's been a pleasure, lads. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate.